Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
Welcome. Stop the cycle. How to handle conflict and reduce resentments. Glad you are here, keeping it real with Rhoda. Today is all about conflict, and if you are a couple that prides yourself on never fighting, that's really not a good thing. Conflict matters because it is about the differences. If you are never fighting, that means at least one person is catering too much and swallowing their disagreement, which also makes things very less interesting. So it may have the appearance of constant joy and happiness, but underneath, unspoken resentments are piling up because pretending the differences are not there doesn't really work over the long haul. It is learning how to make conflict be respectful and not destructive that is the real skill we all have to learn. In a past episode on anger and conflict, 113 and 122, we've talked about the pause. Being able to hesitate can lead to more dialogue and less self-righteous monologues, which we all love to do, including me. There is just so much to learn about being better at conflict. Today we'll explore more practical strategies for managing conflict and reducing resentments so you can argue less and connect more. As you are listening today, I want you to trade in your old idea that conflict is to be avoided at all costs for a new truth that conflict leads to growth and becoming a better person, which anyone listening to me knows that my definition of love is wanting to be a better person for your partner. Conflict can lead to new understanding and even more authentic understanding of people you love, which can lead to way better solutions for both of you. Another bonus of doing conflict well is that it can make room for the 25 to 50 conversations when something's a big deal. It softens those hard edges of the differences. And I think we all wish for one magical conversation that'll just end the trouble. You get to decide if you will let conflict drive a wedge between you or use it as a chance to grow together. Today's guest, who's going to help us learn to do conflict better, is half of the writing team who put together the new book, How to Get Along with Anyone. The subtitle, The Playbook for Predicting and Preventing Conflict at Work and at Home, by Dr. John Elliott, who is not here, and Dr. Jim Gwynn, who is here. Dr. Jim is the president of the Resolution Resource Group, a training and development company that works with a whole lot of big deals, like Fortune 500 companies, professional sports franchises, large-scale school districts, universities, law firms, and governments on how to handle conflict. As a mediator, he has conducted many successful thousands of mediations involving family, organizations, civil, and government disputes. In addition to his firm's corporate work with a large diversity of clients, he also personally trains CEOs from all walks of life, including celebrities and sports icons. Welcome, Dr. Jim.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So one of the first things therapists talk about in order to be more self-aware is to learn about the triggers that help us leap over our reacting. We love reacting. And so could you explain your 3 conflict types that can trigger us for my audience? Because I thought it was a really neat way to think about triggers that's different than the things I say.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you. I think you made a perfect point that so many times we react, and so much about what we teach and we do, and this book is how to get proactive, how to get on the front side of conflict. And so as you mentioned with triggers, the way we look at it is as you mentioned as well, emotion and reason do not play nicely together in the brain at the same time. They just don't, whether those emotions are good or bad. And so when we use that concept concept of trigger. It's when does that emotion spike within conflict? And so the first category of conflict triggers is task conflict, and that is conflict over getting things done. It is getting things checked off the list, whether that's at work, it's maybe our significant other, it's our personal list and something that we need to do. And if there's conflict preventing that, or if we feel like people are interrupting that, that's when that trigger starts to happen for task triggered people. And I can fully admit I'm a card carrying member of the task conflict trigger club.
Okay, and what's
Uh,
the second?
the second is process conflict, and that is over how things get done. So in trainings or in working with people, I always mention that if you don't know somebody in your family that's process triggered, that has their set plan and their set things, whether it's family vacations, we're going here, we're doing this, and it doesn't matter if everybody's having fun. If they're not having fun with that plan, then if you can't think of somebody in your family that's like that, then you're probably that person, and just don't realize it. So this is a having that set process, whether it's at work of how things should get done, or it's having that set, process at home of how things should happen. And if somebody is, we feel like they're interrupting that process or they're not following it correctly, that's when that emotion starts to spike.
Oh, that's so interesting. And what's the third?
The third is relational conflict, and so that's kind of where everybody's mind jumps to. Is it's whether you call it personal drama or it's having a personality conflict with someone, but we kind of take a different perspective. It's essentially it's dealing with a certain family member. It's dealing with that cousin or that roommate that texts you, and you're going to spend an hour with them venting to you or hearing about other people's problems. And for some people that are relational triggered, an hour of that feels like 3 weeks. Whereas for others, it's still frustrating and it may still be annoying, but it's not going to create that same emotional response.
Wow, it's just a different way to think about triggers, so I really appreciate that. Tell us about the four subgroups or extended branches of the conflict tree. I love the fresh way you have us all thinking about conflict.
Well, thank you so much. So the way we look at the four subgroups. So we talk about you can pick up a copy of the book and learn to figure out what people are triggered by. You can take our assessment, but at the end of the day, the goal is how can you quickly identify what someone's style is, what someone's conflict personality style is, so that way you can actually start to predict and prevent conflict. And so these subgroups, we use them as a way to essentially weed out certain personalities, almost as a checklist is what we call it, so that as you go through these, you can start to nail down, this is exactly who I'm dealing with, this is what their profile is, so these techniques will work better with them. So the first subgroup is communication. It's how does that person communicate? Do they prefer to communicate via email? Do they prefer text messages? Are they, in-person people, or are they over the phone? So as we talk about the conflict styles, people that avoid conflict or don't want to resolve it right away, they're going to prefer that distance that email gives them. People that are accommodators, they're going to prefer that text message or maybe even email or social media. They don't want to be engaged in the conflict, but they do want to be heard. They do want to voice their opinion, but they don't want direct confrontation. Whereas our collaborative and competitive profiles, they want that in-person interaction. They want that on the phone if they can't get the in-person, because they want to resolve things right away. They want to interact with people.
Mm. So it's really trying to understand what the other person, how they want to communicate, so that then you can understand more about them and make the conflict work better.
Absolutely. And it's, with the techniques and things that we use to resolve conflict and predict and prevent, there's some techniques that work better with certain profiles and some that will absolutely backfire. It'll make it 100 times worse. And so the biggest thing we preach, and I know you do as well with pausing and taking a break, is if we take a second and we figure out what style does this person have, what are they triggered by? okay, maybe I need to change my style. Maybe I need to change how I communicate. I need to use these certain techniques versus these. And we may be able to paraphrase Barney Fife, nip it in the bud.
Which really requires a little bit of flexibility and appreciation, that you're what you're looking for and understanding the other person. So let's start with the first conflict personality style, the avoider. And please include strengths and weaknesses because I'm a polarities person, so I'm always thinking about both sides.
You'd make an amazing mediator. That's that is the goal. So the avoider, and sometimes this can kind of be misperceived, is these are people that are scared of dealing with conflict. They don't like confrontation, when really it's the opposite. These are people that avoid conflict if they feel it's insignificant, but once they do feel like it's significant, they want to resolve it right away. And so they essentially do an opportunity cost analysis on each conflict to determine, is this worth my time? Eh, or it can wait, and I'll see if it grows and grows up into something that I need to resolve. And then if I need to resolve it, I'm going to have a very competitive style of conflict resolution. I want this off my plate. I want this done. Let's solve it now and let's go. So one of the biggest strengths with this profile is you're not going to get into the weeds. You're not going to get burned out. You're not going to take small conflicts and grow them out of proportion into bigger conflicts. And a lot of conflict can resolve itself, or even better, needs to be handled at a later date when emotions aren't as high. And so that's one of the biggest strengths of the avoider is they're going to look and analyze and see, do I need to resolve this? Do I need to get involved? You know what? I think it's good for right now, which is great. The weakness is sometimes they miss these small conflicts and they misread their opportunity cost, and then they're stuck dealing with the highly escalated conflicts that could have been solved earlier if they had gotten into the game sooner.
Mm, I like that. It adds a complexity to somebody who avoids conflict. It adds a little more depth than just saying you're an avoider, you know? So I appreciate that. The second is the competitor. Tell us about that, strengths and weaknesses, and what that looks like.
Absolutely. So the competitor is someone, if they're upset with you, you're going to know about it. And if they have a plan to resolve it, you're going to know about it. So a lot of times the competitor can get misperceived as being aggressive or intense, or coming across, sometimes it's even as rude if they're triggered. But really, that's not their intent. That may be a byproduct, but that's not their intent. Their intent is to resolve the conflict now. Why wait? Why let it grow? Why let it fester? Why small talk? Why anything? No, here's my problem with you, and I think we should fix it this way. Do you agree? Do you not agree? And a lot of times, they're one of their biggest strengths is they get things done quickly. Also, you're not going to hurt their feelings. If you're blunt and direct back, you know what? Okay, yeah, here's my problem with you, and I think we should handle it this way. They're going to be very accommodating with that. They're going to be, oh, okay, that's a great point. Let's resolve it and let's get it done, because that's really their mindset is, why wait? Let's handle this now. The weaknesses can be sometimes they get a little too excited and can come across as being demanding or controlling, and that can cause some issues. So they may rub some people the wrong way if emotions are high in a conflict setting.
I think I call them top doggers,
Yes,
which
yes.
is a gestalt term, but really that they've got to be on top. They've got to, but the way you're describing it is they are able to be respectful of a different point of view and incorporate it. And for me, top doggers tend to just want their way.
Yes, yes, and that's an excellent point, and that kind of ties back to dealing with a process triggered competitor is a different ball game, because if they're process triggered and they want their process and have that competitive style, that's where you can start to get into some issues.
Uh, I was sitting next to a guy on a plane. This is a long time ago, and I never tell people what I do because then they're kind of trapped. But I did because he made sure I knew he was a CEO of a company, blah, blah, blah. And then he told me about a problem, and they'd hired somebody as a consultant. Anyway, I drew him a picture, and I said, what I hear you saying is that you're kind of like sailing. You have a goal, and you pretend you're listening to other people's opinions, but you're really ending up in the same place. And you don't end up in the same place if you're really listening to somebody else's good opinion. And he seemed really kind of stunned, but I
Yes,
didn't have anything to lose. And
sure.
I just thought that it's not fair to the people. And so
Mhm.
you're saying a competitor that's process oriented, that's what he was because he's
Mhm.
headed for that goal come hell or high water.
Absolutely. I love it. I love that story. That is a perfect analysis.
All right, so that's really interesting. So tell us about the third, the analyzer.
Yes, and that's one of my favorites, and I think every family workplace has an analyzer. So these are the people that they will not be rushed. They want to know all of the information, so specifically in a conflict setting or potential conflict setting. They want to know all the facts. They want to talk to everyone involved. They want to make their notes. They want form their own opinion. And then they're stubborn as heck about it. They will just stick with that plan, and it's very difficult to change it. So the strengths are they get it right a lot. They can be very compromising because they've almost like a judge. They've gathered the facts, gathered the information, and when they decide what they want to do, they're very convicted, which can be a very good thing if they get it right. You can, once again, they can become very stubborn, very stuck in their ways, and it's going to be very difficult to change their mindset. So that flexibility we talked about with the competitor when confronted with information, which I'm not sure if the man on the plane did, but with confronted with that information, if they realize, wait a second, huh, that is right. Okay. I'm going to be just as competitive about following this new path. Analyzer is going to be, that can be a weakness. That can be very difficult for them once they form their opinion.
Hmm. So that stubborn
Stubborn.
is that okay? All right, because I hear husbands and wives calling each other stubborn. What I like about that, it gives more description. Stubborn just kind of is like a stop sign. It just ends. But when you call it an analyzer and you describe it, it's got more of a picture for me and a place maybe I can go with it. So I like that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
So tell us about the collaborator.
The collaborator, and I will once again raise my hand. I am a collaborator. A collaborator is someone who wants to resolve every conflict. They want to talk to everybody. They want to assess everybody. They want to know exactly what's going on and exactly what the triggers are and exactly what the issues are. And then they want to manipulate the outcome into on the positive side, everybody getting their way. On the negative side, it can be getting their own way. And so they're very engaging. They're very interactive. They really listen well. They want to hear. They want people to vent because they're trying to identify what's really going on. And so one of the strengths of that, they can diffuse situations a lot. A lot of times they can lower that emotion very well, and they can resolve a lot of minor conflicts. Two big weaknesses. One is burnout. You cannot resolve every conflict, and not every conflict needs to be resolved at that point. So I know it's a podcast, but I used to have beautiful blonde flowing hair like Thor. It was awesome. That's what my wife married. I'm a collaborator that's task triggered, and so that's where the hair is no longer long and beautiful and flowing. And so burnout can be an issue. If also you can come across the style can come across as micromanaging. So in a relationship, well, tell me about this. Let's talk about your mom. Let's talk about your niece or nephew or these things. And it can come across as that they're digging or they're trying to potentially be manipulative.
Okay. And the last but not the least, the fifth is the accommodator. And would it be safe to say people pleasers fall into this category? That was, I
Absolutely,
thought so.
people pleasers. That is, you summed it right on up. They will accommodate to avoid confrontation. So in a conflict setting, they would rather just do it themselves than have that confrontation with someone else and tell them how they really feel, tell them that they're really upset about something, or tell them that this needs to be resolved. One of the biggest strengths is that people love them. Like I said, they're people pleasers. So they're not going to be involved in a bunch of these minor conflicts and things. The downside is, as if you're listening to your show, that whenever they do blow up, and it's either a fight or flight, they're blowing up about issue number 17. It's not about issue number 17. It's about issues 1 through 16 that they've never said. So this becomes the why are you so upset about not taking out the trash? Why are you so upset about this? Well, it's not really about that. It's about mother-in-law, it's about brother-in-law, it's about sister-in-law, it's about different things. And so a lot of times with this we see, on the negative side, we'll start to see the passive aggressiveness come out, the comments and the things when you can tell they're upset but you don't really know for sure. And left unchecked, you're going to eventually hit that fight or flight mode.
Yeah. So, how do we go about using this new way to think about conflict styles, both in ourselves and in other people, to improve our skill set in conflict?
Absolutely. So I think for ourselves first, it's identifying and knowing these are the types of conflicts that will trigger me. You know what? I am a task triggered person, and I know if I'm starting to, whether it's my wife or friends or family or anybody is interrupting this process that I have in my mind of how I should get things done, I'm going to be triggered and I'm not going to act rationally. I think knowing your style as well is very important to know what you're comfortable with, and that, hey, this style can certainly be good for me in some situations, but there's other situations where I need to fight it. I need to be a competitor, or if you know what, I want to get involved in all of these conflicts, I need to be an avoider here. And so knowing what your default is and knowing which ones you're going to have to actively tell yourself to work on or to use in certain situations is very important. But the second question is my favorite because it's really what the book's about. It's great, kumbaya, I want to better myself and become a better person, which is amazing. But that's why I love what you do. It's not just about me, it's not just about it's how can I connect and as you mentioned, love people and help others. And so the biggest way we do that is as we mentioned before, it's getting on the prediction side of conflict. It's not waiting until it's escalated and you have to come see me in divorce mediation or you have to hear about it or read about it. It's okay, how do we know and understand the other person and know, okay, they're upset. Okay, they're being stubborn. It's the why. What type of situations are causing this that we can maybe, avoid or get on the front end. Or when I do know, what, my spouse or my friend is triggered and okay, not just coming in as the competitor to fix it right away, not just accommodating and letting them go, but you know what? Actually, this style would work well to lower that emotion, build that rapport, and resolve this before it escalates.
So, emotions can trip us up so easily in conflict. Share what we can do to not fall into this trap.
Sure, absolutely. So I think, one, I know we keep preaching it. It's assessment. It's assessing yourself and assessing others. It's knowing, okay, this is going to get emotion, have emotion spike within me, but also recognizing, okay, emotion is spiked within that other person. One, why? That's the biggest thing. We, myself included, we jump to wanting to fix the issue. We don't get to the root of the underlying interest. What's the true reason for this conflict? What's the reason for that emotion? So, assessing that is a big one. And then I think the second is we've got to at least lower a little bit that emotion first before we start to try and resolve the conflict. That people need this, as you mentioned, people need to vent, people need to feel heard, they need to feel validated. And so many times in a conflict setting, we jump straight to wanting to fix it without going through that first. Even if we have the perfect solution already in mind, hearing people first.
Yeah, I think I think the trick is to try to move into thinking and understanding. So, one of the things that I've asked people to do is if they're in the middle of a fight, write down what's important to you about the fight. And then, and here's the thinking part, what's important? What do you think is important to the other person? And then exchange the papers and try to see if you really do understand where the other person is coming from. And when I do that in therapy with couples, people like they get their part really easily, but trying to capture, and I can do it, so I help them out. I'm like, okay, I think, and I check in with the other person and I say, is this what was important to you about this argument? And they'll say, usually, yes, because I am listening and paying attention to them, and it's not my fight. And the other person begins to understand how to think about where the other person is coming from, not just campaigning for their own point of view. So I think what you're talking about is adding a complexity to understanding. And that understanding is going to create more room and flexibility for both people.
Love it. That is a perfect summary.
Yeah, and I think I just think we get so filled with our own point of view that, and part of what you're teaching is think about the other person and what is their style and how do they go about things and what is important. So I think that's great. Please describe 2 or 3 of the universal strategies to build rapport that everyone can make use of today.
Sure, absolutely. So one of these, so full disclosure, my wife and I have been married for almost 13 years. Been together for 15. I went to a university that was 5 girls to every guy, which is the only way that I got her to marry me because there just weren't that many guys. And so she's so much smarter than me, and she sees through all of my tricks and strategies, except for one. So it took 11 years before I finally shared that one with her, and now she sees through all of my things. So the first technique is what we call the voice technique, and so we do a lot of training seminars and things where we'll talk to someone, and you start to lower your voice, and you start to connect with them, and you start to really ask them questions and build rapport, and then you see how they mimic your voice. And so I'm weird, so I love doing this on customer service calls and seeing if I can get someone from New York talking like they're West Texas, or somebody from West Texas talking like they're from Australia. But just it's really starting to slow that voice down, make that great eye contact. I even pick up a little West Texas drawl, and attorneys that I work with call it the Matthew McConaughey voice because that sounds like I'd say, all right, all right, all right. But from a building rapport standpoint, starting to talk calm and starting to lower the voice and doing that, seeing how people start to lower the emotions. Now, for podcasts and speaking, I don't talk like that, or else everybody would be asleep within minute 5. But in next time in a conflict situation, start to lower the voice, start to make eye contact and ask a clarifying question, no matter what that question is, getting people, as you mentioned, to stop, pause, think, and respond. And it's very difficult to hold that higher tone of voice and keep that anger when somebody's actually listening, asking you a question, and starting to slow that voice down.
Mm. So tell us another one.
Okay, this is the one I held back, and now I have nothing. So this is call it the detour technique. So you had mentioned with people writing down what they would like to have in terms of an outcome. conflicts are always about multiple issues, even if someone says it's about one. If you can find me a conflict that only has one issue, I would love to publish a paper on it because I just have never seen it. We all have issues that we use to justify the positions we have, whether it's as a kid using "I'm scared," like my daughter used to get what she wanted. It's we all come up with multiple issues, and a lot of them are smoke screens, some of them are real. But there's always core issues to any conflict or any fight. And so the deter technique is about, as you mentioned, step one, it's listening and identifying what are the core seven issues and ranking which ones are the real hot button type issues. And so as someone in a fight or someone in a conflict setting is starting to get heated, that emotion is starting to rise about issue number two, just calmly using the voice technique, ask them a clarifying question about issue number four. And now, if we don't do this correctly, then we're interrupting them, which can create even more triggers and more emotion. But if we're asking their opinion, it is something that they've mentioned they're upset about. So we're not changing the topic to talk about the Steelers or my Cowboys. But we're instead asking them about something that they've shared. We're validating them. They have to stop, they have to think and respond, and that emotion has to build up again. So as soon as that emotion builds up, we ask another question about another issue and detour them away until that emotion has eventually calmed down.
One more. I
Abs-
think this is great.
No,
I'm
absolutely.
greedy.
So no, no, no. Yeah, yeah. This is my passion. I'd love to talk about as many as possible. So this one's a fun one. So I think it's fun. And full disclosure, this can be also is great if you're playing hearts or spades or poker as well. And so one of the biggest things that preach in mediation or in a conflict setting is establishing a baseline. It's identifying whether it's body language or just any type of behavior, what is a person's normal reaction. And so we call this one the water bottle technique. So in any type of conflict setting or even just meetings, always provide a water bottle or soda or something, preferably with a wrapper on it. In a Zoom setting, if someone has a drink in front of them, and just track how often do they take a sip? Do they fidget and play with the wrapper? Do they twist the cap? What do they do? This also works with a pen, specifically clicky pens, and just establish that baseline as they're talking about and you're walking them through the issues. They're talking about the conflicts or the things that they want to get out of this. We're seeing, okay, does their behavior change at all on a certain issue? Now, I wish I could tell you it was magic and that ooh, if they take four drinks in a 20-second span or click their pen five times. But really, all we're trying to see is there's some form of behavior change on a specific issue. Once we do that, we circle the issue. We know we need to come back and revisit that and retest. And when I bring that issue up again later, do I get that same response, or does their tone of voice change? Does their body language change? Do they start to scrunch in? Do they take more drinks? Do they play with the wrapper? What changes between that?
Hmm. Okay. What is something else you'd like my audience to know that we haven't covered? This is always my last question. And
Sure.
talk as long as you want.
Well, thank you. So, I think the biggest, I guess, two biggest things. So, one, I have two beautiful, amazing daughters. One just turned 9, and one is about to turn 6. And I wrote a book and have a doctorate and do this, and this is my life's work. So, my daughter realized when she was 3 that if she would poke out her lip and say, "But Daddy, I'm 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 scared." I'd say, "Oh, baby, don't be scared. Daddy's here. I'll take care of it." She got away with it for 6 months until we were headed to church. And she goes, "Daddy, I'm scared." And I was like, "Wait, of pants?" She didn't want to wear pants. I was like, "You're not scared. Wait a second. You're playing me. You're using these tricks." And so, I think my lesson learned is that even at a young age, we all come up with issues to justify the positions we take. And so in a conflict setting, people are saying that the issue is about this. A lot of times that's just because they're trying to manipulate the outcome side of things. And then the second thing I always, say with, with the techniques and the things within the book, obviously please use them for good and not for evil, because it is all about reading people and identifying emotion. And but similar to Star Wars, choosing the Force versus the dark side. There are some gray areas. So one, I am a horrible driver, but I have gotten out of 38 straight speeding tickets using these techniques. So assessing the officer, and when he or she comes up, using the rapport techniques and things. So horrible driver. I will fully admit that. I am working on it and trying to be better. Just very absent-minded. But these techniques, I consider that a gray area of using those.
That makes me laugh. My last ticket was in the state of Virginia, and I was in my Miata, and he came back with my license, and he said, "Why?" And I think it's because I was old. And I said, I wanted to say, girls just want to have fun, but I didn't. But it was so right there. I so wanted. He gave me a ticket. I wish I had your counsel before that. So please remind us of the title of your book and anything else.
Absolutely. So it is how to get along with anyone. And the other thing is we have an assessment. So if you've a scientifically validated assessment, so if you purchase the book, you get access to a free assessment to one, see what your profile is, but also a lot of fun for first dates. Just it's not awkward. Just tell them, hey, fill out this personality profile, please, and we will see if we were compatible from a conflict standpoint.
That is cool. Well, there you have it. Conflict skills that hopefully keep you from flipping out or sending that all caps text you'll regret later. Conflict is inevitable, but drama is optional. Thanks for hanging out with me today and Dr. Jim.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.